Hi, Helen here from Bodywork-Pilates, and we're going to have another look at one of our How to Get the Best From series. And today we're going to have a look at one of the classical movements, the roll-up. This is a movement that can be quite frustrating for people. For some reason, it's one of those movements that people feel that they should be able to do. And the assumption very often is that if you can't do it, it's because you're not strong enough. But actually, in reality, if you can't do it, it's normally because you don't have the mobility to do it. And strength is a secondary factor to it. We'll have a look at some modifications because there are lots of portions of the movement that may suit people, but the whole movement is not suitable for everybody. So if you have any back issues, particularly disc issues, this may not be the movement for you. So please do get advice if you think this isn't your movement before you start trying to force your way through it. As we know, Pilates should never be forced. It should be fluid and effortless, but mobility in this one is key. This is, as I say, a frustrating movement for a lot of people. So you'll need your mat and you will start from seated. Now, whether you choose to have your legs straight or your legs bent, I'm going to leave that up to you. Flexibility plays a part in that. So if you aren't flexible enough to have your legs straight and to be able to sit up out of the base of the spine, then you're not going to be able to work with the legs straight. So have the knees bent, which will take some of the emphasis out of the hamstrings, will allow you to sit up a little bit. Whether you have your feet flat or you're just resting on your heels, again, not too concerned as long as your feet stay in contact with the floor all the time. So you must keep at least the heels in contact with the floor. Okay, so this is the movement, and then we'll break it down. So I'll start with the legs bent. It doesn't say, it doesn't really matter, but sitting up nice and tall, going to create my corset, roll my shoulders back and down, slightly retract my chin. I'm going to take my arms forward, and from here, I'm going to slightly pull away and roll across the back of my pelvis. So you can see I'm scooping through, and I'm going to feed every vertebra, bone by bone, down into my mat. I'm going to widen my shoulders, let my shoulders rest, bring my head down. At this point, I've returned my spine to its neutral curve. I'm going to let my arms lift up. I'm going to keep my ribs soft as I breathe out to take my arms back. Don't need to take my arms down to the floor. We keep the shoulders drawn down. We keep the ribs down. Breathe in to lift the arms back up again. Let the fingers reach forward. Lengthen the back of the neck. Soften the chin. Curl around over the shoulders and through the breastbone. Peel through. Come all the way back up. Sit nice and tall at the end of the movement. So that's the whole movement, okay? This is the sort of thing I see happening. So that's the sort of thing we see happening in classes. And clearly, that second demonstration was not fluid, it wasn't elegant, and there was no ease to it. So if you work on this movement and you find that you fall into that low back, it's just because you're not mobilizing the low back. So I would say go back to movements like shoulder bridge, go back to movements like cat stretch from the hands and the knees where you're articulating from the spine without any gravitational pull. So work on those kind of things, maybe working on your squashy ball to get a little bit of mobility around the back, because mobility is going to stop you from rolling down smoothly, and it's absolutely going to stop you from rolling up. Okay, so let's break it down then into portions that you might be able to work on. Up nice and tall. So the movement starts and finishes exactly the same from this tall and lifted position. Shoulders away from the ears, chin slightly drawn in. Again, I'm just working with the knees bent. You could work with the legs straight, feet stay right down. Take the arms forward, okay? And from here, keeping your slight corset, that slight lift of pelvic floor, shoulders down, you're going to just ease away and pull away through that low back, as if somebody were either pulling back diagonally backwards on your hip bones, or slightly less nice visualization, but as if you're pulling away from the punch above the pubic bone and below the navel. So it's this area of your low back you want to be trying to access. Okay? Now at this point, just make sure you've not pushed your head forward and you've not lifted your shoulders up. So the chin is in, we're just letting ourselves curl away. And then keeping that scoop, let yourself come forward and restack the spine all the way back up. Okay? So as you breathe out, slight move away, rolling across the back of the pelvis, so you're moving up the sacrum, and then taking it forward, as if somebody was just pulling on your fingers, lifting it all the way back up. So that would be the first thing that you started working with, creating this C curve of the spine. Trying not to put too much emphasis into the upper body. We're trying to work from the lower spine upwards. And that might be where you go, that might be as far as you go. You might even feel that you'd be more comfortable with a little bit of light finger support behind the backs of the knees to do that. Maybe that works better for you. Okay, so just a couple of modifications there. Then, assuming that your spine is mobile and is starting to mobilise, you could just take that a little bit further. So taking it to a point where you know that you can return from. So at what point do you stop rolling down and want to fall? So if you get to a point where you think if you go any further you're just going to drop backwards, then stop there, come forward, come all the way back up. So you can go as far along the spine as you can control to bring it back up again. Okay? And we are trying to round and curl. We don't just want to yank forward into our hips. Okay? So it is a rounding, a curling, and then continuing that rounding. And then at the end of the movement, we're stacking from the base of the spine all the way back up, crown of the head up last. Okay? So if you know that you go down like a square wheel, then you stop at the point where you think you're going to fall and lose control, and you just work in that range until we start to just nibble away with a little bit more mobility. If it works for you to go further, then that's absolutely fine. You just continue the movement. So you start again in the same movement. You lean a little, rolling into that low back. Think about really lifting the pubic bone. Think about the emphasis that you get, the curl of shoulder bridge, and try to apply that. So lifting the pubic bone, not pulling heavily forward, but just feeling that your upper back gently rolls through. Your ribs are slightly sliding down. There's no tension in the neck, and just take yourself bone by bone down to the mat. Now at this point, just let the hands rest. So in this position, we should now be level through the front of the pelvis, natural curve low back, ribs softened. Okay? And if you know that rolling back up doesn't work for you, all you have to do, roll over to the side, push into the hands, so you can safely bring yourself back up and keep working on the roll down. Until you've got the roll down in place, you're never going to roll back up again. So really work on that roll down. And then you can consider thinking about the roll back up again. So we start as we do, sitting nice and tall, shoulders rolled away from the ears, chin slightly retracted, little corset, slight lift of pelvic floor. So we engage that strength through the midsection of the body. We lean a little in order to curl away, creating that scooping effect, that feeling of pulling away from that space below the navel, above the pubic bone. We feed every vertebra down into the mat. We let the shoulders widen, let the head rest. We return the spine to neutral, lift the arms to the ceiling. Now, the distances we have between our ribs and our hips, our breastbone and our pubic bone, our bony landmarks, remain constant. So don't let those distances change by flexing the body as we just move the arms back. Arms only go back in line with the corner of the eye. We don't need to take the arms all the way down to the floor. Bringing the arms up, breathing in. As you breathe out, get a feeling of sliding the ribs down more, lengthening the back of the neck just by softening the chin in, curling around the shoulders. Ribs continue to slide. And then if you can, continue that movement all the way back up, restacking the spine all the way to the top. Okay, so if you roll down smoothly but can't roll up smoothly, you continue to work on the roll down because there's still something there that's not mobilising sufficiently. What you don't do is you don't do this constant covering the same ground thing, trying to come back up again. You would simply roll onto the side of the body, push through the hands, work onto the roll down. And then keep working on the things that might help to mobilise the spine. So work on your rotations, work on your flexibility of your hamstrings, opening up the shoulders, work on some side lateral movement. So keeping the spine as mobile as possible in all areas will help to mobilise the spine in its forward and back movements. So all movement in the spine feeds into all movement in the spine. And then really work on making the movement as fluid as possible. So notice for those little pockets of tightness or restrictions as you roll down, because they'll be the things that stop you from rolling up. So always working on the roll down before you'll master the roll up, but work in a small range of movement if you need to. And remember, once you're down on the floor, think about the neutral line of the body when you start to move the arms in exactly the same way as you would if you were doing your backstroke or if you're doing your tabletop legs or anything like that. So we stabilise when we're lying on the ground, then to prepare that roll back up again. So as I said at the very beginning, it's not a movement that works for everybody, and certainly the full movement doesn't work for everybody, but there are modifications. If you have any questions, just let me know. But drop me a comment below and let me know how you get on with that. I'll speak to you again soon.